Hi, everyone. I want to talk briefly today about job creation. So, we regularly hear politicians, especially, talking about how to create jobs or how they can create jobs for us. And they often promise to create jobs with some new spending bill or project they're planning. So, I want to make it very clear that there is no reason to create jobs. Well, first, let me take a step back. First, if jobs are to be created by anyone, it's very important that the job be profitable. You have traditionally had, in many countries, a lot of government projects specifically for the purpose of creating jobs that made things worse rather than better. So, for example, during the Great Depression, there were a lot of infrastructure projects that were not needed and were unhelpful just for the purpose of putting people to work, paying them just to dig ditches, as it's often said in economics. Well, paying someone to dig ditches wastes money and is a net consumption of capital. If a job, just like a business as a whole, if a job or a business is unprofitable, you're consuming more resources than you're creating. We have jobs and we have businesses in order to create new things, additional goods and services. If the job or the businesses are unprofitable, you're consuming more resources, more goods and services than you're creating. So, first, it's very important to have those jobs be profitable. But the main point I want to get to is that there is no reason to create jobs. There should be more jobs available than there are people to work. We don't have a lack of work to do. There is plenty of work for everyone. Whatever we're creating now, we could create more of it. We could create more cars, televisions, sofas, steel, crude oil, everything that's used to create the products. I mean, products are created by people working to create the tools that create the tools that create the products. So, all through that production system, we need more of everything. We need more steel. We need more crude oil. We need more cars. We need more services because our humans are insatiable. We need more of most things, maybe not everything. We probably don't need more table salt, but we want more things in our lives. And the more things we have, the lower the prices. And we want to need more of these things. That's why we continue making them. And that's why everyone wants more money. That means they want more things. Money equals things. So there are plenty of jobs for everyone. We can create more of the things that we're making now. We can create the things this year that we would otherwise create next year or next century. Go ahead and create them now. The problem is not having enough things to do. There's plenty of work to be done. We need more of these things. The problem is that there's only so much money and capital to go around. What we have a shortage of is capital. Capital pays for the tools and machines and the supplies and the raw materials to make things with, but we also need workers. We need labor to go with that capital. So a lot of the capital we have has to be spent on the tools and machinery and materials, and the other half of it needs to be spent on workers. Well, whether it's workers or whether it's tools, goods, and machines, if the price of, well, put it this way, that capital can only buy so many things because everything has a price. But let's focus on workers specifically because where I'm going with this is the cause of unemployment is artificially high wage rates. wage rates are not set by the market in many cases. They're manipulated by the government, by unions, such that they're higher than market. And I'm going to show you how this results in not enough capital for all the workers that we have. So consider that you have, we mentioned labor capital tools. Put that aside. We're going to focus on the other side of what capital pays for, and that's labor. So you have a certain amount of money to hire all the workers that you have. And any amount of money can hire all of those workers. But let's take a simple mathematical example. You have $100 in an economy. You have 100 workers. So that $100 can pay for or buy all of the 100 workers. So $100 paying for 100 workers will be an average wage of $1 per worker, average salary of $1. Okay, well, if you had 10,000 or a billion or $10 trillion, it can all buy those workers. You can divide that amount by the number of workers. That's essentially what would happen in a free market. And everyone would be employed. But what happens is, going back to the $100 and the 100 workers, the government comes along with minimum wage laws and says, instead of paying $100 per worker, or instead of paying $1 per worker on average, you must pay $110. We're going to give those workers a 10% increase in wages because we don't think those workers are earning enough money. Okay, well, if you've still got just $100 to spend, and companies do, businesses economy-wide only have so much money. They've got to spend it on tools, factories, and machines. They've got to spend the rest on workers. They only have so much to spend on workers. So if they still have $100 to spend, but the government says you must now pay each worker $1.10, well, that $1.10 per worker leaves a shortage of workers. You can't pay $100, you can't pay $110, or it would be $1.10. Instead of $1.10. You can't pay $1.10 to each worker and still pay the whole 100 workers. So if each worker is now earning $1.10, there's only enough money for 90 or so workers. Take $100, divide it by $1.10. That's 90.1 workers that $100 can fund. And the more you keep, well, so therefore 10 workers are going to be unemployed. You had 100 workers working, you raised minimum wage by 10%, or you raised wages by 10%, that leaves 90 workers. 10 got the axe. They're sitting on the sidelines because there's not enough money to pay those 10 workers. If you double the minimum wage again, you're going to have more workers laid off. What happened if we raise the minimum wage to $100? Well, we only have $100 to spend. So if the minimum wage is $100, one worker gets $100, and the other 99 workers are left on the sidelines with no work, no jobs. That's one of the causes of unemployment. The other cause is union legislation. So unions are allowed to have their workers get hired, agree to pay for a certain wage, but then the union is able to come after that and say, hey, we agreed to a certain wage, but we want all of our workers to have higher wages. We agreed to work for $100, but we want $110, or $1.10 per worker now. And they have the power to do it. And the legal system obligates companies to negotiate and pay some higher wage rate. So Through that means and through minimum wage, companies are forced to pay a higher wage rate per worker than would be the case in a free market, where they would pay everyone according to what they could afford to pay. That is the only reason we have unemployment. There is no other reason. So unemployment is man-made. So anytime you hear about a politician talking about creating jobs, just think about they could create jobs instantaneously by getting rid of the laws that they've put forth, forcing workers to not be unemployed. So if you're interested in more details on this, see the links below. I have some pages where I've written about this topic. And you can also feel free to leave comments and we can discuss. Okay, take care, everyone.